Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Banh Chronicles podcast. This is your host, Randy Kim. So, we are at the end of AANHPI Heritage Month, which is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Month. And this month has just flown by, and so much has happened during this time, and I want to be able to reflect on this with a solo episode, which I really haven't done in quite some time. And I've been wanting to do more of these monologue episodes where it's just me talking and being able to reflect back on what is currently going on in real time. We're also now heading into Pride Month, and I'm going to turn 43. This is Gemini season, and I am turning that age on 6/7. And I will blame you fellow millennials for birthing these Gen Alpha kids who are ruining and appropriating my birthday. But anyways, but yeah, what a time it's been. It's crazy that we are halfway through this year, and I want to take some time to reflect on this past month. And AAPI Heritage Month or AANHPI Heritage Month, it's a time to celebrate. It's a time to honor our contributions, ourselves, and also serve as a continual reminder of what is possible for our communities to thrive as a collective, as individuals, as ways to innovate, as ways to take care of one another, as ways to remember our history, to celebrate it, and to use it as a blueprint for the kind of future that we would want to create. And it's also a reminder that AAPI Heritage Month does not end at the end of May. It's a continuing everyday experience for us, and it's a reminder, especially in a time where DEI cuts have been happening since the Trump 2.0 administration has taken place. There's been a lot of erasures in terms of censorships and AAPI history not being taught in many public schools across the nation. And this is a reminder that there's so much work that needs to be done to know about the history of our people and our vast communities, and also the history that hasn't been talked about in schools or in the history books or even in traditional media. And also to be able to make sure that we have access to resources, from whether it's through a podcast, whether it's through books, documentaries, and what have you, and the many resources that it's very critical for us to make sure that we are aware of our history and what is the blueprint for our community in order to survive and eventually thrive. So I hope that for those who are in this AAPI or AANHPI world, I hope that this is an opportunity to learn about your history, to think of ways to celebrate yourself and the people around you, and to tap into your curiosity. And AAPI Heritage Month, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be saying AAPI or AANHPI because it's kind of like a mouthful here, but it's been a very fruitful experience. I was able to perform a live storytelling piece for the Asian American Arts Festival through Asian American Arts Chicago, and many thanks to Mia Park, who is the founder and the producer of that festival, and it was at the Looking Glass Theater, and I gotta say, this was a great experience. I had not done a live storytelling event in quite a while, but I also have not gone off book even longer, and so I decided to do a story about my recent mental health and a grief journey. I know this, for those who have been familiar, I have talked very candidly about the loss of my brother Andy a year and a half ago. And I also talk about my own challenges with mental health during around that period of time. And I decided to title it Son of a Grief, because the idea that, grief is very intergenerational. It's something that we tend to inherit, especially when there's trauma that's been involved. And for my parents, they have been survivors of genocide and other forms of violence. And it's something that has been kind of carrying over, not just from my parents, but also from my family members who experienced a lot of harm along the way, and how that tends to manifest in the way that they raise, their children, including myself in this case. I also wanted to say that, yeah, grief can be such a son of a bitch. It's a real pain in the ass. But I've also learned that it's also necessary to understand the kind of love you have, and the love you have for the person that you've lost. And also as a reminder of how we try to honor those who are not here with us. And I wanted to do a storytelling that really speaks to that experience. And I gotta say, this was a very scary experience for me to do, because when I had applied to it at the end of last year, I was like, oh, I'm gonna just go for it. And I had it in my dreams that I really wanted to do this one-man show, this one-person show about this storytelling piece. And I decided, well, I'm gonna see if I could do this as like a 20-minute monologue and see how I'm gonna work with it. And when I got accepted around February, I was just starting to write my piece, and I was workshopping that to a group of fellow readers, fellow writers, and I literally wrote it. I think I had finished it the day before I was ready to just share it privately, and I think it was like close to 30 minutes long, and I kept sobbing like every 5 minutes. And it was a very emotionally draining story to read, and so much so that like the next month and a half, I wasn't really rehearsing. I wasn't really putting a lot of time to practice it. And as the weeks kept going, I was like thinking, okay, I'm gonna put this off, and I'm gonna do this again like next week. And I think part of the issue that I was having is it's having to relive that trauma in certain ways, and having to be reminded of that pain, which was clearly very fresh in my head. And if I'm having a very good day, or if the weather's nice outside, I'm like thinking, well, why do I want to practice this? Why do I want to be sad? And so it took a lot of battling, with it. And I actually talked to some close friends of mine, and one friend, my friend Annie, was basically saying, well, maybe there's certain parts that you don't really need to share in that moment. You tell when you are ready to share, and share what you feel most comfortable, what makes sense to you in that moment. And I think that mindset kind of helped. I had like about a week to go, and my friends were asking me, are you nervous about it? Are you really excited about performing? And I'm like, well, strangely enough, I wasn't feeling nervous at all, but I felt woefully underprepared. And I was like, I really haven't been putting a lot of serious practice into it, but I think somewhere along the way, I kind of felt like I could really tell this story. And so I decided to just jot down a couple notes on my note card as like references, and figuring out, okay, the first 5 minutes is going to be about this, the next 5 minutes is going to be devoted to this, the next 2 or 3 minutes should be about this. These are certain lines that I would like to remember as reference points. And gotta say, I think that was a very helpful way of doing this. And I practiced it like maybe for 2 days. And I was outside, at a park and just practicing. And, there were tears during that time. But I also felt pretty good because I felt like even though I wasn't really practicing consistently, the story that I was telling is something that very much lives with me, and I live with it like every single day. So I think that it has allowed me to be more reflective and to be in a better place to finally tell that story. So when I was arriving to the venue, I was walking from Union Station to the Looking Glass Theater, which is in the Michigan Avenue, the Magnificent Mile. And it was a good 30-minute walk, but it was a beautiful day. And I just walked, and I chose not to listen to any of my music or any playlist or a podcast. Or I just went in just feeling very calm and feeling very good. And my friends were there to be supportive, and it was a very small, intimate space. And it was a really good experience to be able to tell that story. And yes, there were some moments where I was choking up, but what I felt was this need, or this motivation to honor my brother, but also to honor my own story and to give it the love that it deserves. And I felt that in a way it was very healing for me, and I felt very empowered, and I felt like I really made my brother proud. And actually the day before, I visited the tree that we planted, and I said a few things to him, and I told him that I hope I'm gonna make you proud. And then after I was done, I talked with friends, and there were friends I hadn't seen in a while, and it was really good to reunite with some folks and to meet with other new people that I haven't met. And it was a really good experience. And when I came back home, I went to my brother's tree and I thanked them. And I just felt like I was doing this to really honor his memory, because that grief still lives with me. Anyways, so there was that. And I hope to be able to expand more on that story, because there's so much to tell, and there's so much that I want to share. And also, I think there's some very funny moments too along the way, which I really want to showcase that yes, there is humor in grief as well, and that it's also part of this whole healing process, which is pretty much an everyday practice. So aside from that, I was also speaking virtually to a group of university students at the University of California in Merced. Professor Mylin Hong and Ma Vang invited me to speak with their students, and the students there was comprised mostly of Asian American and Latinx folks. And this was for an AAPI cultural studies class, and I was there to talk about the podcasting journey, but also the importance of documenting our own stories from the AAPI context, and what that really looked like. And I gotta say that this was a wonderful experience. Like, I really enjoy talking to universities, especially with students and faculty, and to really gauge what they're thinking of and what their process is, because it's been like almost 20 years since I graduated from undergrad. And it's it's very interesting to kind of see um, where their thought process is and what they are dealing with and trying to navigate as young adults, trying to figure out what this world is going to look like for them, um, and it was a wonderful experience being in this group. Like the students asked amazing questions about the thought process of starting this podcast. They were asking questions about um, my way of dealing with vicarious trauma when recording very difficult episodes, and how to gain the trust of your guest. And yeah, they were very great questions. I think this was like really one of my favorite groups. And Mylan is a person that I connected with, I'd say, about a year ago, and definitely been a supporter of my work. And I also shout out to her upcoming poetry book. It's called Continental Drift, I believe. And yeah, please check her out. Yeah, I also have been releasing a lot of wonderful episodes as of late. I actually have a couple of stories to share. I interviewed Cameron McLeod from Cure for Paranoia. And Cure for Paranoia is this emerging hip hop group based out of Dallas, and they've been NPR Tiny Desk finalists for the last few years. And so originally, I was supposed to interview him about a month before that, but on the day of the recording, his manager accidentally double booked him, and so I had to wait for another reschedule. And so when I started recording with him, I think 5 minutes into the episode, and you can listen to it right now. 5 minutes into the episode, Cameron gets a call, or actually gets a text message, I should say, from the NPR producers saying that, well, we need to meet with you the next day. And gotta tell you, Cameron's face was just like in shock, and I think he was really getting psyched and getting very, holding a lot of anticipation. And I was like, you know what? I think he got it. And I kind of made this reference because I'm a big Chicago Bulls 90s fan. And I talked about how Michael Jordan in the Chicago Bulls could not get past the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons like 3 consecutive years. And, the Pistons were like beating them up and psychologically torturing them. And Michael Jordan, was frustrated each year and year in and year out. And by the time the 4th year hit in 1991, the team finally overcame that. They swept the Pistons and then would go on to play the Lakers and win in 5 games to win their first NBA championship. And I told that I used that analogy to Cameron. Cameron was like, yeah, I'm going to remember this. And so fast forward to a few weeks later, I was ready to put this episode on for the next day. Like, I had it scheduled, and Cameron sends me a text, and he was like sending me a gif of Michael Jordan crying when he had his first trophy. And I was like, I think he won. And Cameron didn't really want to confirm nor deny, and I was like, yeah, you won it, And so the next morning, I literally was dropping this episode, and then I see Cameron and, Cure for Paranoia and the band like really on this Zoom call with the NPR producers, and they announced that, yeah, he was the winner. And, and it was just amazing to watch. And, like, I really am so happy for Cameron and his group, because, their music is wonderful. It's innovative. It's fresh. And, he's a Black queer hip hop artist, and yeah, and I feel like that there needs to be more folks with, especially with different intersecting identities, to be shown a lot of the light that tends to be ignored in traditional media outlets. And and I think that his exposure, being a final contestant in the last few years have really raised the group's profile, and this has been so well deserved. So congratulations, Cameron, on your well deserved win, and I cannot wait to see that performance. I think it's going to be mind blowing, and I hope that you all get to follow Cure for Paranoia. I also got to do some fun episodes. I interviewed my good friend Jung about the Lilith Fair, because Jung's a huge Lilith Fair fan. If you don't know what Lilith Fair is, check out that episode. We go into this deep dive about like 90s women in music and how Lilith Fair, which was like a women's festival, which was the first of its own kind, and we kind of went into the weeds about the political nature of it. Could it exist in today's world? And I had so much fun with it. Like, I was already doing like this my top 25 songs of the 2000s with Angeli, and like, I'm like a big fan of like doing millennial pop culture deep dives, and I created the Chill Out Chronicles segment for my podcast, because it is very separate from what I do with the Banh Chronicles, where it's very focused on the AAPI voices, and now with the BIPOC voices, and including the LGBTQI voices as well. But also because a lot of my episodes tend to be very serious. It tends to, there's trauma that's involved. I've done a lot of emergency episodes, especially regarding the ICE raids that were happening. And I think one of the more important reminders is I want to make sure that while these stories of that's going on with our communities are still vital, still very important, and still something that I'm going to commit to doing, I also feel that in order for folks to not tune out completely, I have to add some enjoyable content, and some form of escapism. And also, it's also for my own sanity in some ways, because it is very hard. Sometimes when as much as I really feel very empowered doing the emergency episodes, because in a way it gives me a little bit of hope interviewing the people who are doing the hard work and fighting for our communities, and being a part of trying to intercept harmful narratives. It can also be very taxing. There are times when I would get on the mic and I would get very angry, very irritable, irritated most times, and I'm like, okay, I kind of need to be in a place where I have to do some enjoyable episodes where I can laugh, where I can, really be like my 13-year-old self, like sharing like, trivia, like facts, about my favorite artists or certain pop culture dives that people don't talk about, so I feel like that was a way for me to try to also not only show the things that I do like to talk about on my free time, but also as a way to remind us that, yes, we should experience joy. We should have abundance, because that's the energy that's going to fuel us to not only survive, but also to be able to innovate, to be able to create a better world around us, and to protect our communities. So I hope that you keep this in mind, that yes, you can still have joy, but also as a way to fuel the kind of fight, the kind of resistance that you need to fight against the tools of oppression and the people who are creating the chaos. And I think this is a very important reminder of that. So with that said, I know that we're also going to be into Pride Month, and while it is a celebration of our queer identity, especially as me as a queer man, a queer Vietnamese Cambodian person, I also think it's very important to remember that there is an active erasure that's been going on in the LGBTQIA communities, and especially with trans rights and with trans people. And we've been seeing a continual reversal on LGBTQ history and censorship, and also on rights. and specifically with trans people. Like, it's been ongoing, and there's a lot of harm that's being done, a lot of surveillance, and it is a very dangerous time. And while Pride Month is a celebration, it is also an important reminder to also think about the history, but also the current community issues that are affecting them. Whether it's with housing, food scarcity, whether it's with ICE, whether it's with um other personal civil liberties, and so forth. And I hope that this is a month where we are reminded about the power of community, and that this is a continuation of the work that still needs to be done. And how do we continue to honor our ancestors and honor the people who have laid the foundation, and how do we continue to build upon that? So also, I'd say for AAPI Heritage Month, I've been doing a lot of self-care activities. The weather's getting warmer in the Midwest. I've been doing a lot of nature trails. I'm trying to keep my blood pressure under control here. Been doing some K-spas, doing some friend hangouts. I actually did a somatic session the other day. Actually did a sound bath session, which, if you haven't tried it, you gotta try it. It's a really good experience, and my friend invited me to it, and it was a really great experience, and really enjoyed being able to ground myself. And I feel like each day, when I'm doing my nature walks and doing my little forest bathing, where I'm just allowing myself to just walk quietly, and walk at my own pace, and just be surrounded by nature. And sometimes, even when I have my music on, I've also made a habit where sometimes I don't even listen to my music or podcasts. I would just allow myself to just sit and walk in silence. And I also notice how I often would close my eyes as a way to be very cerebral, to be very grounded, and to also remember to always pause and to have a better awareness of reading where my mind and my body is at in the moment. So yeah, self-care is very important, and it's kind of like crazy that it's already been a year since I had left my last job, and since then I've been kind of floating around doing a lot of random work, and it's been focusing a lot on the podcast and the content creation. I have more content that I would like to put out on social media. So yeah, it's been keeping me very busy, and yeah, content creation is no joke. It is a lot of work, and I'm trying to get a good grasp on it. I'm actually doing I'm still taking my Vietnamese language lessons, and still meeting with my tutor virtually for the past year now. And it's wild because, at the beginning, I couldn't read Vietnamese. I couldn't read or couldn't put together consistent sentences. And now I feel like I've gotten some level of basic conversations going. I can text questions, and I can text to some of my friends, in Vietnamese. Am I fluent at it? No. Does it matter? No. But I think just being on this journey for the past year, especially in my 40s, has been really a great way of reclaiming this part of my life that I felt like was taken away, and that I felt also estranged from at the same time. So it's been a great experience because I feel like I've been making more friends, especially in the Vietnamese community, and actually my friend Tony Tran, shout out to him, and then with Habayo Cafe, they've been setting up the Vietnamese language meetups monthly since beginning of March, and it's been fun. I mean, I have been meeting a lot of people, and meeting people that I've never met, and just learning about all of our various backgrounds and where our language journey is. There are fluent speakers. There are people that are just trying to learn or trying to get an understanding or to be in a space of Vietnamese people. And yeah, that was a very profound experience, and I'm so glad to be a part of that because it's giving me a reason to continue to take these lessons, And shout out to Tony Tran for doing amazing work. I'm really proud of what he's been able to create in Chicago, and Habayo, has been doing great community work. And yeah, if you live in the Uptown area or if you happen to be around that Asian Argyle neighborhood, just stop by. Anyways, I know I've been kind of going on for like about 30 minutes, longer than I expected to, but yeah, I want to say I have reached 50,000 plus listens on my podcast already. I have reached over 100,000 on my YouTube channel, so yeah, it's kind of wild, I don't know what to make of it. I'll be honest with you. There are times when I was kind of like debating whether or not I should have, talked about my milestone because, and this is something that I try to tell people, or this is what I try to tell myself, to not compare yourself to others. But, in this space, sometimes I feel like I do. And, like there are times I'm like, oh gosh, I hope people think that, think less of my podcast because I didn't get 100,000 listens after like several years, or that I didn't get 200,000 like some of my other podcasting colleagues. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? 50,000 for like 170 episodes, that's a lot of people, a lot of different people, whether it's like a person listening to just an episode or two, or a person that's been like religiously listening to it. I mean, I have come across so many different people from all kinds of backgrounds, and some of them have become my friends, and some have become my guests. And it's been a wild journey, but it's been so fruitful. And like a year ago, Author Win Fun Quay Mai, who wrote Dust Child and The Mountains Sing, basically said to me when she came to Chicago and we did this live talk, live author talk, and she was basically telling everyone in the audience, like, yeah, Randy, he has a podcast, the Banh Chronicles, you got to check it out. And at that time, I had not been doing a podcast for like a year and a half. I had stayed away from it. I didn't really want to have anything to do with it. I thought I was kind of moving on from it. I think my last season, I was just really tired of it. And I was like, I need to move on. I feel like I've done enough. But, she was telling everyone that. And I got to be honest with you, I was pretty embarrassed by it. I was like, I wasn't thinking about coming back to it. And, but when I gave her a ride back to her hotel, she basically said to me, well, Randy, we need your voice. Your podcast really did wonders. It's doing wonders, and I hate to see you not continue. And I told her, well, I'm going to think about it. And around that time, I was already starting to take my own personal leave. And the entire summer, I felt like I was just recalibrating and having to, process my own grief. And when I got back from Oregon, the curiosity, the drive just reemerged, and I was like, man, I think I'm ready to go back. And yeah, 50 episodes later, it's been a great run. And now I've been getting more people contacting me to be on my show, and they're like from publicists and publishers, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually being taken seriously now. And it's kind of wild because the last month I've interviewed an NPR Tiny Desk winner. I have interviewed a person from the Rolling Stone magazine. I have interviewed one of my favorite podcasters from the Pop Pantheon. I have been able to interview a Latin Grammy Award winner who was given to me. Yeah, it's kind of a wild journey. And I'm looking forward to more. I'm looking forward to a lot of amazing conversations. And I'm ready to, see what comes next. And I think this summer I may slow down a little bit on the recordings because, it's summer. I don't really like to do a whole lot. But at the same time, stay tuned because I'm sure I'll have things to do, and I'm sure there'll be some videos of me dancing and being silly and on Instagram Reels and on YouTube Shorts. So yeah, but anyways, I just want to say thank you so much for all your love and support. Thank you for, really supporting my comeback to this work and reminding me how much I really missed it and how much I am enjoying it again. So I will say happy Gemini season. I know that a lot of people don't like Geminis, but we're a pretty cool bunch. We have some bad apples, but we have some really amazing, creative, chaotic bunch here. And I hope that the start of summer is gonna treat you all well. So take good care, hydrate, look after one another, and most importantly, look after yourself. See ya.